All right, we're up. This is the Our Town with Troy By, and Ann Kepner is here from a nonprofit that you may not have ever heard of called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And their motto is, no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. So Luke Mickelson is a gentleman in Twin Falls, Idaho. Mm-hmm. And this is about 11 years ago. He, like a lot of people are, especially here in the South, which is good. People are religious. They go to church. It's not necessarily frowned upon. It's not something you hide from. In other parts of the country, it's not so much. You know, a lot of people that's like a rarity, right? It's actually somebody goes to church.
Oh yeah.
But he was a youth leader, and they found out that someone in the congregation that the circumstance was such that the kids did not have a bed to sleep in. And so he decides that he's going to say, hey, goes to the young men that he leads on a kind of a weekly activity on Wednesday night. Why don't we build a bed for this child? And so they do. But the cool thing was, it's not just, it's not like just went and bought a bed.
Right.
He's like, hey, I'm going to teach you. He's a farm boy, and probably handy. Been around. He grew up with just his mom, so I don't know the story of like a grandfather or uncle. But if you're going to be on the farm, you're gonna be pretty handy, probably.
Generally, I would think.
And so he gets the tools together, teaches these boys how to cut, sand, drill holes. They put together a bunk bed, and it gets delivered. Well, then he actually has, and he was not on that initial delivery. But so then he comes home and he has all this extra wood and decides with his kids, it was close to Christmas, hey, why don't we go build another bed? And you guys can help me. So now he's like teaching his kids. And then I actually I'm going to show you something here in a second here. Let me pull this up. I actually have the Facebook post that he put on Facebook of this bed, because he's like, what do we do with it? And his wife said, why don't you just put it on Facebook?
Oh, nice.
And this was September 2nd, if I can see that right, back in like 2012, December 2nd or something like that, 2012. It's kind of blurred out. But that's the bed he built with his kids. And then from there, it just takes off, right? You hear these stories. And I believe in 2012, they did 11 beds. And there are so many angles to this, which I find so interesting. And we've just covered some of them. Some of it's, okay, yes, there's going to be a recipient of these beds, but what about the volunteers that are involved? Teaching a group of volunteers. Have you ever used a saw? Whether it's a miter saw or a sawzall or a jigsaw, bandsaw, whatever it is, orbital sander, sanding machines, and just, maybe you got some of that at woodworking in, middle school, maybe you didn't. But there's that aspect too. And so from there, it's grown and was featured on Mike Rowe's show.
Yes.
Back in 2018.
Returning the favor.
It's like 10 million views.
Right. I never had even heard of the show.
Really?
And when I went out to Utah last year, so a group of 5 of us went to Utah last July to do this training. And we get to this warehouse in Lehigh, and it was actually humid there. It was raining a little bit, which is bizarre because, we're right outside of Salt Lake. There's very little humidity. It was hot, but it was actually humid. But we're in this warehouse, and they keep saying RTF, RTF, RTF. I'm like, what the heck is RTF? And I was getting so irritated because I have this whole lexicon of acronyms that they have not yet defined. And so there's a break. I asked the question, okay, what is RTF?
Right.
They're like, returning the favor. You haven't heard of it? And then later in the day, they hand out a piece of paper that gives you definitions for all of these acronyms. And even SHP. And they were calling it SHQ at the time, which is headquarters. And now it's not anymore. It's just corporate. But, every single organization has its own abbreviations that make it unique. But we saw clips from that at our training. I think I've watched the whole thing now a few times because I've done different things with SHP. And I mean, that is really what blew up the organization and got it national acclaim. I think they had, I don't want to give you an incorrect number, but they had an influx of new chapters after that.
Yeah.
And that was 18, right?
2018. Yeah.
And then, you know what happened in 2020. COVID happened. A lot of chapters shut down. Chapters weren't quite sure what to do. Some were sitting on just a pile of inventory of beds or wood and not building because of COVID.
Yeah.
So now since they've come out of that, they're building back up again. I believe they have a goal by 2025 of having 500 chapters. And they are, in fact, international now. They have at least one chapter in Canada, maybe more. And there's at least one chapter in the Bahamas.
Wow.
And I mean, the word has just gotten out. It's an amazing organization. And it's the kind of nonprofit, you know, some nonprofits, they kind of get a little bit on the political side, depending on what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But what is political about a child needing a bed?
Right.
I mean, you can't go wrong with it. And it just gives them dignity. It gives them their own space. It allows them to have that good night's sleep that makes it so imperative to be able to learn when they get to school.
Mm-hmm.
A kid that is unrested is unfocused. And, you know, my mom was a teacher. I have a lot of teachers in my family. Kids are hard enough without being sleep deprived. And just having that moment. We've gotten text messages and messages on our Facebook page from so many moms that will send us a message of, it's just a picture of kids in bed, like you just see lumps. She's like, they slept in.
Yeah.
They slept through the alarm. They've had the best night's sleep. And so it's just such a gift.
Yeah, going back to the founder, like one of the most pivotal moments for him early on with delivering beds was like some girl who's 6 years old, and he realizes they go into the room that she was just sleeping on clothes.
Right.
That she had cobbled together. And then if I would say if anybody watching this, go to the Facebook page, Returning the Favor, Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs and other stuff. He's a good storyteller. And the great thing about their break was they were in a very humble garage warehouse. It had holes in the ceiling. It didn't have heat. I don't think it was freezing cold in there. There's rats running around when they first moved in. Very humble, and they're doing their best to bring all their equipment in. So part of the show was they had arranged through the community, had kind of gotten in on this, and they got a new facility and like $120,000, which basically meant 4 years of free rent.
Right.
And orchestrated by a general contractor, and all his subcontractors came together to help kind of build out this new facility for SPH and SHP. Sorry. And so, what a cool story. I mean, I even teared up a little bit, just as far as good stories, good Americans. You know, Mike Rose seeks this out there in Idaho. And what a break, right? Who knows if the organization would be as far along as it is now if it doesn't have that kind of break. And immediately you're in this, you can just do more. Then, you know, this truck pulls up and there's like $1,000 worth of lumber that was just donated, right? And then off to the races. So now, and he mentioned that like at the time I was listening to another podcast where maybe it was like 384 chapters. And it sounds like one question I had to you was to update that number. So it sounds like they want to go up to 500.
I think if you go to the main shpbeds.org website,
okay,
right on that first page, it should tell you the number of chapters. There's a counter that keeps up with how many chapters, how many beds have been built and delivered. And that updates consistently.
Really?
Because every time we build beds or deliver beds, our chapter president is updating that on our site. So they're tabulating that constantly.
All right, so let's bring this close to home. So talk about when did the Huntsville chapter come into be?
So this all came in effect. I would be remiss if I didn't mention by name our chapter president. Her name is Mary Ina Heath. She's a good friend of mine. She's been in a small group with me for many years, just a group of ladies that have come together, and we pray every week, and we do life together, and it's been just a wonderful group for me to have. We call it Sisters in Prayer, so it's SIP. I say SIP sometimes, and people think I mean the little whiskey bar downtown. But no, that's not the one.
Yeah.
This one was first, I think. But anyway, Mary Ina is our chapter president, and she was the mission chair at a church that we used to go to. And when we were there, she knew of Sleep in Heavenly Peace from a chapter that was somewhere further north. There's a couple other chapters north of us and I'm not great with all the names of these different towns. I know there's one in Florence. I know there's one in Birmingham, but I can't remember the other names. Anyway, she worked with them to have a build at that church. It was Huntsville First United Methodist Church for a mission weekend. And I believe that was in 21. I think it was in 2021. So we had this build as part of our mission events. There was always a mission event weekend in February. So I went to it with my husband, and I never ended up making it outside. I had a new Chihuahua puppy at the time, so I had brought her along because she was like this big, like 2 pounds maybe at the time. And I was like, she's going to be my ministry today because everyone will want to love on a puppy. So my husband was outside, and a lot of youth came out. A lot of families came out. It was assembly line. Bam, bam, bam. It was done. I think they had 50 beds built in like 2 hours. And they did it all outside, and it was cold. It was February, and it was a cold February. So we had done this, and this was from another chapter. We raised money with our church. I know our Sunday school raised enough to do at least one bed. Anyway, so Marion is like, oh, I really want to do a chapter here. So she was talking about it, and we have a regional lead, and his name's Tommy Goodman, and he's been very instrumental in getting that mission and vision out in North Alabama and throughout the area. And I think he's with the Gadsden chapter. So he had a meeting with us and anybody who was interested who might want to go to a training and start up a chapter. And what was really cool about this is my husband really enjoyed the building part of it because he's a tool guy. If there's a tool out there that he doesn't have, he's got to have it. He likes to have everything matching. He likes to have everything organized. So I thought it was great because I like the aspect of helping kids out. I have worked in nonprofits. I have a background in nonprofits, and anything with kids, I'm there for it. You know, I think that's part of the mission. We have to help protect the future generations. So it was neat for us because we both connected with the same thing, which literally never happens. We are complete and total opposites in about every way imaginable, but it works. So Mariana had been talking about this. We did a couple meetings. It ended up being my husband and I, and then I know some listeners will know Dr. Bill Sullins. He is an eye doctor in town. His wife is Susan Sullins. She was a former teacher, and Mariana's husband is Warren Heath. He is an attorney. So anyway, we were talking. We're like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to go to the next training. And I believe they have them every quarter. And they just happen to have a great warehouse that's available in Lehi, Utah. So that's where they've moved these trainings to. And they do them, like I said, quarterly.
Yeah.
So our church supported us in giving us some funds to go out there and helping us start this group. We went out there to the training. It was a weekend. It was just fabulous. I mean, they gave us all the information about how you do a build.
This is the flyer, right? Like the kind of
Yes.
with the upcoming trainings.
Yes. So it
gives
just
you a little bit of itinerary.
Yeah, you can see it gives you the mission, the history, how they market, how to utilize social media to your benefit, how you seek out grants, do your budgeting expenses. And so day one is the literal training to build the beds. You go through a very small, like mock build. You want to work through every station. There's saws and sanding, and they use these jigs so that when you're building headboards or even side rails, you have a jig that you tap on, and it tells you where you drill the hole. So they practically dummy proof it. I mean, they've really organized this in such a way that I am not super handy. I don't particularly like tools, but I can totally build a bed.
Yeah.
And I have instructed many people on how to build one on a delivery now. So I still don't love the actual build process. I like to be the greeter and get everybody situated. I'll give you a tour of the building. Let me make you a name tag, have some coffee and donuts, all that good stuff.
Right.
But yes, they do a really good job of really just streamlining the process. It's kind of assembly line. And so after we went to that training together, we came back, and Sleep in Heavenly Peace does a national event called Bunks Across America, and it is always the weekend after Labor Day weekend. So that happens to be when my husband and I's anniversary is. So we are typically out of town at that time, and we were last year. We went to Barbados. So the rest of the members of our chapter, along with a couple of other new volunteers, got together and they did a very small kind of backyard build to practice. Now, the thing that has not been mentioned yet is Lowe's. And again, I would be remiss if I did not mention Lowe's. They have donated, I can't even tell you how many millions of dollars to this point. They have a perpetual fund that all new chapters get access to funds, and not only new, but existing chapters that you get continuing funds to help further your cause. The Lowe's in South Huntsville, their store manager was very familiar with Sleep in Heavenly Peace. He had been in a different store and worked with another chapter. So when my husband contacted him, he was very familiar. He helped us to buy all the tools. I believe they were sold at cost. And just very supportive of the organization as a whole. So we have all DeWalt tools that match. I think we have 3 of the big saws that you put up on a table. I forget what they're called.
Like a miter saw?
You go like this.
Table saw? Yeah, it's a miter saw.
Miter saw.
Chop saw.
Yeah, I don't touch it because I will lose a finger. If you want to have an accident no, we don't need touching saws. So tons of sanders. We do tons of sanding. And what else? Drills, drill press, the drivers, just all the things. So Lowe's has been amazing, helping with the wood orders, just everything you can imagine to situate the organization. So they did this small build and they built like 8 or 10 beds, something like that. And we had our first delivery in October of that year. And our first delivery was a great story. It was pretty much our core volunteers, those people that I just named. We went out to meet with this mom. She was a veteran. She was fleeing a bad domestic situation, was from, I think, Virginia or, a northern state, had 3 little girls, a set of twins and another girl. And so they fled this bad situation, pretty much had whatever they stuffed in the car and, the clothes on their backs.
Yeah.
And was in a nice home, but just needed some beds for those girls.
Yeah.
And we had not advertised. I don't think we even had our Facebook page yet at that time. I don't know how she found us, but she put in an application for beds. We delivered to her, and she was just amazing. And she gives back to us now. She's in a better situation, and it was such a joy to see those kiddos just get so excited and have their own beds. And when we deliver beds, we deliver not just the beds that can either be singles or bunks, but we also have brand new bedding, pillows. Bed in a bag sets work great because everything's in one, and we make up the beds for them. And we just love to get pictures with the kids on their new beds. And some of them get right in the bed and will go to sleep immediately. I was on a delivery a couple of Sundays ago, and little boy was 3 or 4, and he was on the floor kind of zoning out in front of the TV, and we were making his bed. And when I say make, I mean using the driver, and it was noisy, and he got out of the room because he was annoyed. And then we're like, hey, your bed's ready. He crawled right in it and was asleep in like 2 minutes.
I bet.
It was so cute. But
that's awesome.
So it's just taken off from there. We had a couple of builds last year, and I can't tell you exactly how many. It was a couple. And then in January of this year, we had a fabulous build with the UAH boys and girls basketball teams. That was amazing. The mayor came out. The UAH president was there. The head coaches were there. The kids were awesome. I mean, they just loved it. And it was so cool to see those kids just pushing forward, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
They were kind of making it a competition, like, oh, you suck at this. I'm so much faster than you. And it was just a really, really cool experience. And now we have just reached the 500 mark. We have built and delivered over 500 beds in Huntsville in just a little over a year.
That's awesome.
So that's awesome. But at the same time, that shows just how real the need is. This is the word that I always use when I get to speak about Sleep in Heavenly Peace is, have you ever heard the term child bedlessness? And people are like, is that a real word? I mean, I guess it's a real word. I'm pretty sure Luke came up with it and SHP corporate, but it's real and it's affecting our community.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see, not just for me, for the kids, for families that do this together. I mean, I think it's so important to teach the next generation how important it is to take care of the less fortunate
Yeah.
and to give back. I mean, most of us in the United States are the 1% of the world. Let's not joke.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have something to give, whether it's financial resources or just our time. If you don't have the money, surely you have some time.
Sure.
And just having that moment, it's just, you can't really describe it.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. And it's so trite to say, but it's so true. You always get more out of it than you put into it.
Absolutely. One thing that when he said it, Luke, right, the founder,
Luke.
he said, you know, if you're going to go into nonprofit work, and you probably heard this in the training, you got to be careful because it can be extremely addictive. And I mentioned that because I want to talk now about the application process.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also saying how hard it was at times to be comfortably situated in his bed to go to sleep one night. And he might look at his phone or his computer and kind of look at some of the applications that came in for people that were looking to, get a bed and having to read their terrible situations. You kind of just went into one. Didn't go into all the gory details, but we can surmise, read between the lines. It wasn't good. It wasn't pretty. This mom and her daughters, right, deserve a better life.
Right.
Get away from the monster that she was married to. So I'd like to ask you about, let's just kind of start at the beginning of this whole process. We've kind of touched on a few elements to this, but kind of let's go soup to nuts and starting with that application process.
Sure.
And then that along the way, I would, your commentary on how addictive I'm sure it can be, particularly when you see the results. But let's start with the application process. And I was thinking this might be how that lady found you, where she maybe have just knew about SHP.
She didn't. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but
you're good.
It was some connection with. It was Still Serving Veterans had heard that there was a local chapter.
Gotcha.
Which they're
sense.
another great local group. If you haven't had them on, they
I
should
have.
come on. Okay, good.
And gave a substantial donation to them through my company.
Well, let's
Couple
hope
years
there's
ago.
one coming to SHP soon.
But yeah, so application process. So anybody
Okay.
can go on and apply.
Yes, so the application process is probably one of the easiest applications of any kind of assistance that there is out there. We do not ask for much. We want this to be the primary home, and it is ages 3 through 17. And that is because 3 is the age deemed to be safe to sleep in a regular bed without
Right.
safety rails, and 17 is because when you're 18, you're an adult.
Right.
So ages 3 through 17. And we don't ask for income verification. We just ask, how many beds do you need? And the other thing is, you do not have to apply for yourself. We have had school counselors, like guidance counselors, apply. Anybody that works in healthcare, there are 3 FQHCs in this town, which are federally qualified healthcare centers, who are treating the underserved of our community. Those are probably the kind of people that we are working with, because underserved, underfunded, they might not have beds that they need.
Let me interject one fact related to that with Thrive, who I just interviewed
Right.
Mimar. The stat that she talked about was 92,000 people in the greater Huntsville that don't have health insurance.
Right.
I would surmise, I'm going to go out on a limb, that there's, I'm sure, a high percentage of those may be in a situation where they don't have all the furnishings in their home. And there's going to be some percentage that don't have a bed, or, potentially, or the things that we take for granted.
Absolutely.
That are readily available. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. So I definitely have a heart for the community. I'm very familiar with nonprofits.
Yeah.
Worked with one for almost 10 years, serving the community, lots of children there. And yes, those are exactly the people that need this program. And even like this veteran mom that we talked about, she's back on her feet now. She's situated here. She's good. She's giving back.
Yeah.
She just needed a moment, right? And so we're there in that moment, whether it's this is a long-term problem or this is a short-term problem, we still want to fill that need. So application is super simple, all online. We have QR codes everywhere, or you can go directly to our website, shpbeds.org. You search for the chapter, the Alabama Huntsville Chapter, and you can apply for a bed. You can also apply to see what's coming up with our chapter, when our next build is, all that good stuff. And follow us on Facebook for sure, because that's where the most information about our chapter is. We post pictures weekly of deliveries that we're doing.
Okay, so then as those that in management, the board, the other leadership positions of which you hold, what is your actual role, your title within the?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the only board that's for the national organization.
Okay.
So for local, for our chapter, it's called a core team.
Okay.
I'm part of the core team.
Gotcha.
So I don't have an official title. On our website, it says that I'm the social media manager, which is funny to me because I'm terrible at social media. I did start a LinkedIn page for the organization because I think it's great to share with all of those people that I'm connecting with and repost there, because it's just another way to get the word out to the community about what we're doing and how to sponsor us and how to help.
Okay, so some members of the core team receive these applications, do an initial triage.
Yes.
And I don't know if I missed it, but in this triage, is there I guess some disqualifying parameters potentially?
Potentially, age is probably the biggest, and the primary home.
Okay.
So, if this is the second home, that's
Sure.
really not the purpose.
Right.
If you're going to dad's on the weekend, that's not what we're here for. We're here to make sure you have a bed in your primary home.
Okay.
If we fulfill every single need in the community and we're sitting on a pile of beds that don't have homes, then I'm sure we do something, but I don't see that happening anytime really soon. Let me give you an example. So there was a viral moment that happened in July this summer. Some kind of influencer put the word out. I don't even know what channel, if it was Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. It probably was Instagram or TikTok, since Facebook's for old people. But it went viral, and SHP headquarters had to send out a message like every chapter was flooded with requests. We had to work through over 300 requests from that date. So we have finally come through that. So we have been closed to applications since July.
Wow.
And have been fulfilling all of those. Now, throughout that, whenever something goes viral like that, you get a lot of spam. People just kind of applying because they think they can get something for free. And unfortunately, our chapter president has been working through those on her own in her vast free time. She is a grandmother of, I think, 6 now.
Wow.
And still working part-time as an attorney. But yes, we always need more volunteers, and we would love someone to come and vet applications for us. We only ask that you call up the phone number, whomever has filled out this application, verify some facts like the address, the kids' ages, names, and that it's the primary home, and whether they're singles or bunks. We can do the beds as bunks or as singles. So,
okay.
And we don't have a limit. I mean, I think the biggest number of beds we've done for one family is 8 or 9. For one family.
Wow.
So that took some coordination. And I was not involved in that build, or I'm sorry, in that delivery. But there was another delivery that I was a part of that we did 14 sets of bunks for the new family homeless shelter that is getting situated right now. And forgive me, I can't remember the name of them.
It's like New Century or New...
No, New Futures is existing.
Futures.
That one
Okay.
has been around, and that is the only one in North Alabama, not just Huntsville. That's
Right.
the only family homeless shelter in North Alabama. There's a newer one coming. I believe it's called a Hand Up. And I met the people at just at a little local event called the Community Connections meeting through the Elm Foundation, and we exchanged some information. They got in touch with our chapter, and we were able to facilitate getting them the beds for kids to have in their facility. So that was great fun, getting 14 beds together, 14 sets of bunks together, and making up all those beds. And it just so happened there were more guys than ladies on this setup. So they flew through building these beds, and then they're kind of standing around. I'm like, all right, you can make some beds too. Here's the sheets. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, it only took maybe 2 hours. It's just, we're very efficient in our processes, and that is mostly in part due to national, but also due to some of our amazing core volunteers. John Klein, I'm going to name him because he has just been wonderful in helping us set up our warehouse in such a way as to always be working smarter, not harder. I mean, he has measured things out. He has everything organized. He has tape on the ground. It's a beautiful process, but I'm jumping ahead. We're still on applications.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get to that part. This is all good stuff, and this helps paint the. We'll fill in the lines, right? I think we're setting up this nice template of where we're going to go, but. So then the idea is, let's just say, argument's sake, there's 50 applications in a week. Is that a month? What do you think? 50 in a week or 50 in a month? What's more realistic?
I bet a week, but we can't get a good sense on that because as soon as we ever open our applications, they're waiting, they're filling because we can't keep up with the demand yet.
Okay.
We haven't been able to build enough to keep up with that demand.
Let's just say this. Let's just say 200 for a month.
Sure.
Okay. The next step now, okay, you're going to be as efficient as possible with a build day. Mm-hmm. So you assign a day, and let's kind of talk about how far out. Is that 2 weeks from, okay, we're going to do these 200, and it's 2 weeks from now because you now need to coordinate the volunteers that are going to help construct the beds?
We're kind of doing this backwards.
Okay.
We have to start with the build because we can't do anything until we have the beds.
Okay.
So we're not even really open for applications until we have beds. So
you're requesting material for 200 beds, that type of thing?
The most we've ever done at a time is we were working with another chapter to do 100,
Okay.
but typically we're going to plan for 30 to 40 beds for one build.
Okay.
So to give an example for next year, our goal is to have 10 to 12 builds for 2024, and we haven't got into cost yet. A bed costs $250. That covers the mattress,
everything,
the bed, the wood, and even most chapters have to rent their warehouses. We have not had to rent. We have a fabulous realtor friend that allows us to have a warehouse for free as long as there's a warehouse available for us to have. So that's been another blessing.
Right.
Innumerable. I mean, you just can't count it the way people are reaching out about this. So we do have a build coming up on December 3rd. So the things that happen are we count whatever wood is left in the warehouse. Mm-hmm. We count what kind of bolts and screws and all of those sorts of things. So that's what my husband does, and he actually has the title of build manager.
Okay.
So he has done this a couple weeks back since after our last build. He got everything situated. He figured out how much wood we needed to order. I think there's 3 different sizes of wood that you use for the beds. There are side rails. The headboard and footboard are exactly the same. They basically get turned the other way to go on a top bunk. And then when you have a top bunk, you have an extra safety rail just to keep the child from potentially falling out. And then you have slats that go down the center of the bed to hold the mattress in. So those are all, I think, 3 different sizes of wood. So all of that gets calculated. The website even has a bed build calculator. So you put in how many you want to do, and it tells you exactly how much wood you need to order. I mean, they've really made this process as easy as possible. They've pretty much thought of everything. And it's funny, the bed that you had pictured there, they're so different now. Like there are 9 slats that go down the center of the bed. There's no ladder ever. I mean, kids just climb up the end.
Yeah.
They're fine. And even the way that they're built, it's just so strategic, the way that it's handled, that they initially started out delivering beds put together. Now you have a headboard, a footboard, 2 side rails, and the 9 slats, and they're even shrink wrapped so that they're in a nice little bundle. I can fit in, I have a car, just a car. Mm-hmm. I can fit everything for probably 3 beds in my car.
Really?
Yep. Takes up no room. You do not need a pickup truck to be able to deliver beds. Just keep that in mind. Anyone who wants to deliver beds.
Okay, so you have to decide what kind of monies there are for you all to buy more material if you need to. Mm-hmm. And then therefore you get an idea on, okay, we can do 20 beds.
Right.
Now let's go look at our applications and pick 20. That type of thing? For whom we're going to deliver to.
Yeah, whenever you have everything planned out, you literally want those beds built.
Sure.
So right now, we have just a handful left. Our last build of this year is going to be on December 3rd, which is a Sunday. And we had another chapter gift us 60 beds. So
Oh, wow.
some of our crew is going down, I believe, tomorrow to pick up 60 beds from another chapter that just has an influx. They've pretty much saturated their area. They're more rural, so they're gifting us those. And so now our push is going to be delivering not just those 60 beds, but the 30 or 40 that we're going to make in, 2 Sundays from now?
Right. So now we're like 90 to 100.
Yes.
Now you go to the applications to determine
Yes.
which 100 are going to get them. And then the
Yes.
rest will get them in the next build.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
I
And
gotcha.
then we need the delivery teams to go out.
Right.
So I typically go out every Sunday and deliver, and I have a group of friends that I can call on that will come with me, and I'm happy to take new people whenever they'd like to go with me.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just tell you, I am very much, I'm a type A controlling type of personality, but I do have an artistic side. I never thought I would be instructing anyone on how to put together a bed. And I can instruct anyone on how to put together a bed.
Yeah.
And I know how to troubleshoot when the holes aren't quite right and it's not straight. But again, we've made it dummy proof. We even have little stands that our fabulous John Klein has built for us so that when you have a headboard and you need to fit that side rail in, you have a little stand to hold it level that it just sits on. And then you put a little pin in the end so that you're lining up the holes. And there you go.
Yeah.
Then you just put your screws in and bolts, you're good to go.
That's awesome.
You only need 2 people. It's so easy. And the better part is the mattresses used to come full size. You know, you do need an SUV or something bigger to tote around a mattress. But now they're vacuum sealed, rolled in a little tiny ball, and they just pop open and puff up. And they even have springs in them. So they're a good mattress.
Amazing.
But now that they're shrink wrapped, vacuum sealed, it's so easy. It just doesn't take up any space at all.
I want to do this. I'm going to show you a clip from Luke from an interview he did, and I think this is going to touch on an important aspect. It's something I want to talk about when it comes to delivery. But let's watch this.
It's different. They're in their situations not because of their choices, and that's different from the parent, right? So it's hard to see that. It's like the starfish, you know, there might be thousands and thousands on the beach, but if you pick up one and throw it in the ocean, you made the difference in at least that guy. And that's what we try to encourage is you focus so much on the big screen or the big picture of it, it can be overwhelming. Just focus on what you can do now. Because that's really what's most important. And the reason why we wanted to expand and get more chapters all over America, all over Canada as well. Our mission statement is no kid sleeps on the floor in our town. It says our town, not my town, not your town. It's our town because we want.
That's right. Our town. Mm-hmm. The one thing I wanted to key in on, he was talking in the full context, right, of this interview. They were talking about, well, what happens when you go to a house where they actually have a really nice house and they have a TV that's bigger than your TV, yet obviously the kids don't have beds, and it's easy to be judgmental. Mm-hmm. It's easy to be pissed off or whatever your emotions you have when you're presumably there to like, wait a minute, you're going to judge, right? That's just the way we are. Mm-hmm. We're going to have some sort of reaction to like, how come these people can't buy a bed? They can buy this or buy. And I think he's just saying, don't worry about that. Focus on the kid. Focus on why you're there. You're there because they don't have a bed, and you don't need to judge. You don't know what everybody's story is and whatever the circumstances. So I mentioned that as a primer to say, have you been in that situation on deliveries where you found yourself, this is interesting. I'm going to keep my comments to myself here, but this is interesting.
You know, I really haven't. I will say that almost every home that I'm in, I notice there's typically a big TV and maybe not much else. And there's typically some smartphones and maybe not much else. And I mean, I have worked with the underserved for the last 10 years, so I'm used to that.
Yeah.
So for me, I already know what to expect. And I think many, many people in this community, if you're not working with the underserved actively, you're very shielded from what they're going through.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I'll say is, yeah, they might have a big TV and a phone, but there's nothing else there. Like, they'll have the rattiest couch you've ever seen, and there's no other furniture to speak of. So that really hasn't been my experience. But again, we're not there to judge. If they don't have a bed, there's a reason they don't have a bed. And again, it is never the child's fault that they don't have a bed. They didn't make that decision.
Right.
It all comes down to priorities. And all we can do is be there for the kids. We're not too worried about those parents and whatever they're doing, but I have not seen that in Huntsville.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have a lot of single moms. We have some single dads, and probably one of my favorite deliveries was the sweetest man. He was a grandfather, and he was not an old man. He was maybe in his 50s. He was raising 4 children that were his daughters, who was suffering from a drug addiction.
Yeah.
He had these beautiful twin girls. They were, I think, a year old, and then I believe 2 other kiddos. And just, he had an immaculate home. And that's something I'm not used to. There's a lot of, not good housekeeping that goes on, and that's something that I know a lot of people judge about. But it all goes back to home training, right? Like how my grandmother kept a beautiful home. Both of my grandmothers did. I grew up that you keep house. You cook your own food, you clean, you do your laundry every week at least, and that's how you live. But if nobody ever taught you that, then that's not how you're living, right? So again, I've worked with the underserved for a long time, so I really try not to judge. And for me, I also don't get too caught up in that whole, the problem is so much bigger than I can ever do, because, and I think it's because of my faith too. Like, God put me on this earth for a reason, and I can't solve everybody's problems, but every little one that I help with, that's a gift to them and to me. And that's what I can do with my time. So if I'm making some useful decisions with my time, then I did well for today.
Yeah.
And, that's all you can do. You're one person, and we're one organization, and there's a lot of fabulous organizations in this town, and we're filling a need. And I hope we're here for many, many years, but I hope that we have less requests as the years go on, that we are really fulfilling that need. But we'll just see how it all plays out.
For me, it's been just so fun to kind of be this storyteller of North Alabama, where I've talked to Downtown Rescue Mission, and I've talked to Wellstone, National Children's Advocacy Center, Thrive, First Stop, on and on, with all interrelated in a way. And yet this is a new one where it's like, just providing beds.
Right.
Which is, and in this interview as well, he was kind of talking about, you hear about core competence if you ever start, study business. And the same thing with the nonprofit, they have to be, and let's get your commentary on this, where you have to be careful where, look, you do beds. That's what you do. And it could be very easy to, we could do nightstands, or we could do this. And then the next thing you know, you kind of lose the identity of why you started. And, but also, and then that can just be very dangerous and detrimental for different reasons. But it all just kind of comes back to, okay, what is our primary purpose? We are going to provide beds to children. Right. And
exactly.
And I think that's part of that's important when you have the corporate side and the training that goes on and the new chapters that come online. And my understanding is kind of going back to that inflated number of chapters. So since the Mike Rowe show, there was a lot of new chapters. Right. And one of the lessons learned that he talked about was they no longer will accept just one person that wants to start a chapter.
Exactly.
There has to be that core team that you're a part of, more than 2 or 3, so that it's not just it's just in one person's mind, or it's going to succeed or fail just based on their own personal investment.
Right.
Right. No, you have to have that core thing in place in order for it to last.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I think people get burned out working with nonprofits, because there's never enough money.
Right.
There's never enough time. There's never enough volunteers, right? Because everybody wants to solve all the problems of the world, and you can't take it all on. So that's what makes SHP so unique and really successful ultimately, is and actually that was an older clip of Luke, because since that time, The motto is no kid in our town sleeps on the floor, but the mission has been updated to we are striving to end child bedlessness. So that's the mission,
Yeah.
that we're going to put an end to child bedlessness.
Yeah.
So it's gotten bigger, right? And I think that's what they've really succeeded in doing is they found that niche, they've perfected it. They're always finding ways to streamline their process to really just make it a better experience for the volunteers, because when they first started building, they were putting these beds together and then staining them. Now, the staining process, let me tell you this is interesting. So we have the headboards that are put together, and then we have the side rails. Those pieces all get stained. And the way that we make stain, and we make it, we're not painting stain on. We make a stain that is vinegar and steel wool. We've made it on our back porch. You put it in those 5-gallon buckets from Lowe's. You have so many stainless steel, clumps in each bucket of vinegar, and you stir it up for a few days. And if there's good sun, it melts that steel wool, and it stinks because it's vinegar.
Really?
But what it does is it protects from bed bugs, and it gives the wood a light patina finish. So you can get some good color in it if you add in some coffee grounds, and just gives it a nice finish. But we have these little dip tanks that were built specifically for these. So you dip the headboard straight in and you pick it back up. And then there's long skinny ones to dip those side rails in and pick them back out. And then you just kind of line them up and let them dry. So again, they've learned that you don't paint a full bed and have it set up in a warehouse. You do it smarter, right? So just everything that they've done has really furthered that mission and made it successful because they're organized. They're very efficient with the way they do things. And I mean, most of our builds, they're done in 2 hours flat.
Yeah.
Because everybody comes out, we build 30 or 40 beds. We try for as many as we can and done.
Yeah.
Cleanup is pretty simple. We've got our warehouse tricked out. Now, even with all the dust that's created from the sanding machines, they're hooked up to this vacuum system that there's tubes that all the dust goes right into these buckets. It's not in the air. It's clean. It's so much less cleanup. I mean, efficiency is really the key.
So you're buying gallons upon gallons of vinegar?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Maybe. I can't lift a 5-gallon bucket, but, we have made it on our porch, my husband and I, one time. But I never knew that vinegar did that. It makes sense because vinegar will kill anything. It's a great household cleaner. But to protect from bed bugs, that's something that I would think these families might need.
That's cool.
And it just gives it that light tone. But the other thing that's really cool that happens at every build, and this is something that everybody likes to do when they're there, is we have one of those little smokeless fire pits. And we have brands that say SHP. So you have that brand ready to go. And I mean, kids love to do it.
Yeah.
Little old ladies that come out, they can sand and they want to brand that bed. And this was a cool story. So I was at a delivery this past Sunday, just in the little projects right downtown Huntsville. And there were these sweet little kids there. And there were 2 other kids. And they're like, oh, these are our cousins. And they were like, we got your beds. I'm like, you did? She's like, yes. And she gave me her address. And she's like, do you know who delivered those beds? I said, I'm sorry, I don't. We have so many volunteers. And she's like, well, somebody from SHP came and delivered our beds. And that SHP is on my bed too. And it means sleep in heavenly peace. I said, you are exactly right. And I hope you've been sleeping great. And they were just the sweetest little kiddos. They were just so excited. And there was a little 5-year-old there. His nickname was Tank. And he was a little peanut guy. His nickname was Tank. And we just had a ball. He was helping us make the bed. We'll let the kiddos use the driver and get that bolt in. And, that makes their day. And he gave me the biggest hug when we went to leave. And, I wasn't expecting it, but it was so sweet. That's so cool. That's what makes it for me,
So you mentioned earlier, so the price is basically all in $250 to construct a bed.
Yes.
With bedding and everything. But, you'll take donations, right?
Absolutely.
$5, $10, whatever. And then, so there's the monetary donations, and then there's, at times, the Lowe's of the world might supply lumber and other materials that you all need. So then it comes down to the volunteer side. Now, What I also thought was really cool, and you can comment on this if you have any information, but Luke had mentioned that most nonprofits, 30 to 40% go to corporate headquarters, and then the rest goes out to the actual cause. Unfortunately, there's probably some where it's more like 90% go to corporate and 10% go to the cause, right? And that creates a lot of wariness in people.
Absolutely.
Right? There's always going to, no matter who you are, because we've all been burned and lied to, and someone that there's something that you might think was credible and it turns out that it's not. But he was very proud to say that 10%, somewhere around the 10 to 12% is what goes to corporate.
Yes.
Meaning 90 to 88% or whatever actually goes to building beds, which is phenomenal.
That is phenomenal. And that's one thing that I am really proud to be a part of this organization for that reason as well. I don't know if you're familiar with GuideStar, but it's a site that rates nonprofits and how fiscally responsible they are. And they give each nonprofit a rating. And I believe SHP has a platinum rating on GuideStar.
Really?
Because of how responsible they are with those funds. And I was recently at a really cool event. It was, I believe it was the end of October, that Sleep in Heavenly Peace, they've been around for just over 10 years. And they had something that they called the family reunion. So they invited all existing chapters and new chapters to come out to Charlotte, North Carolina, and had a jam-packed weekend with continuing education. They had some amazing keynote speakers and unveiled some really cool stuff. And that was one of the things that they're so proud to state, that they really respect these sacred funds.
Yeah.
Like, any money that comes into a nonprofit is sacred money. And when you are in charge of that money, whether on the chapter level or the national level, that's a big responsibility. So the fiscal responsibility is huge for me, and to see that it's really wisely utilized.
Yeah.
And they have such an efficient team, and they've been able to grow, and they still have this amazing rating.
Yeah.
And they do such a good job.
The other thing I thought was cool, when you do donate, you can choose like which chapter you actually want it to go to, right? So it's not just a big donation to whatever, and you don't really necessarily have visibility. You actually get to choose. No, I want it to go to Huntsville or Gadsden or whatever.
When you go on the website, shpbeds.org, you choose your chapter and you send that money, it comes directly to us. I see the P&L reports. Our chapter president sends them out. I think they update weekly. We get them in our email inbox, and it says who that's from, unless they want to remain anonymous. Yeah. I know my parents in Pennsylvania have gifted money back to our organization, and they've supported it from the beginning just because I'm involved with it too. And my husband and I have gifted money to it. And, this is a whole separate issue, but we were on a search for a new church home this year, and we visited a lot of churches. And in that time, we tithed to SHP because we didn't have a church home. So we're like, what are we going to do with our tithe? We're not going to sit on it. We're going to give it to SHP because it's being used right in our local community. So, your money is at work. The other thing that I want to touch on that has to do with funding is one of the things that they do state in training and just throughout with SHP corporate is one thing that you really don't need to spend your chapter funds on are bedding and pillows, because there is always going to be a local organization that's going to donate that to you. And it's been so true. It was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we went to the warehouse to deliver some beds on a Sunday. We had several teams going out, and I said, we're out of pillows. And we just didn't realize we were completely out. We had more deliveries than we thought we were going to have, just back to back. Yeah. So we ran to Walmart and we got enough pillows for that day, and then put the call out on social media. We had some Sunday schools and some churches and just some other groups come together and bring us a ton of pillows.
That's awesome.
So we were back in pillows again. And I also want to call out, this will be a good time to mention it. I'm with a women's leadership group right now called Momentum. I'm in class 2. So Momentum is a women's executive leadership group that started out of Birmingham 22 years ago. And they started class 1 last year. I had a couple of fabulous women that I knew that were involved with the organization, and one of them had recommended me to be part of class 2. So I am in class 2, and I put the call out to them like, hey, ladies, we're out of pillows. We need some more bedding. And they've already said they're bringing me some pillows and bedding, which is fabulous. So, you just never know. It's a great thing for kids groups to get involved in, like a scout troop, a sports team. I mean, school kids, any ages.
How do people sign up if I want, those I instructed at church youth to participate? How do I go about signing up for a build day?
Well, now you know me, so you would come direct to me, and I'll get you on our calendar. But otherwise, you go right to our chapter page on that website, shpbeds.org. And I don't mind if anybody calls me directly. I'm happy to put out my contact information here if you'd like me to.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Ann Kepner, and you can reach me at 256-288-8732.
Say it again.
256-288-8732.
It's like in radio training. They're like, you got to say it 10 times, Ann. Right?
One more time. I can say it more if you'd like me to.
Isn't that funny? Like sometimes you find like a commercial to be obnoxious, and then you realize how effective it is. Because they told you, now call 1-800, blah, 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 blah. They say it 10 times in the commercial. Like, well, I guess I know the number now.
That's true. The one thing that I would love is we are absolutely looking for corporate sponsors. We have been very blessed that we've gotten some fabulous grant funds from this community. I'm sure everybody in Huntsville knows there are tons of contractor groups that help support Redstone Arsenal and the NASA and Army and the MDAs here, missile defense, all of those things. So with that, many of those corporations have wonderful employee giving programs that we have been able to get some wonderful grant funds from. And, we're just really looking for groups to come to us and say, hey, we want to do a build. And our minimum to do a build is really, we want you to be able to supply the funding to do 20 beds. So 250 times 20.
$5,000.
Yep, $5,000. I don't think that's a ton for a corporation. I would be happy to do that myself if I was working full time, but I'm not right now. I'm taking a little sabbatical for myself. And, one of the things that I really wanted to do with coming on the show and just even creating the LinkedIn page for SHP is get that out to corporations. I've made some new friends. I helped with the United Way campaign this year, and that was a great experience. Just working as a loaned executive to help do that campaign for the 2024 year. And, there's just so much good in this community. And I know that there's groups that they're like, where do we give our money? Well, we're another option. So that's what we want. That's what I want to accomplish with this, is to get the word out to more groups that, hey, we are happy to take your funds and we're happy to take your volunteers. So in an ideal world, I would love to see us having a corporate hosted build once a month for all of 2024. And right now, I think we have 5 to 6 groups planned that have confirmed. So we're about halfway there.
That's awesome. And the one thing I really, in doing the research on this and thinking about it and thinking about my own experiences in life, the thing I really like about this is there's this tangible output. Okay, I can donate money, and then I know that when I show up, we're actually going to build some beds, and we're going to get to deliver them and make someone's day and interact with that family, and hopefully it maybe sends that family on a new path, a new trajectory in life. It might be that kid now who has a little more confidence because they got a good night's sleep, or they're sleeping better. Yes. They perform better in school. Who knows?
I know. I mean, that's my hope. And, here's my little mission moment, but I'm obviously a Christian, and Jesus came to help the least and the lost, right? And those are the most forgotten members of our society. And I think, here in Madison County, we have some very big haves, and we have some very intelligent, very wealthy people here that are very comfortably living. In this community, Madison, Huntsville, we have a big disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And you might know this by now, Troy, but I don't know that Huntsville has the highest concentration of PhDs in the country.
I do know that.
So, we have some really smarty pants around here. And with smarts like that usually comes some good money. So, the whole thing is, though, you can be comfortable in whatever you're doing. Even if you're not making a ton of money, you have a comfortable life. You have a roof over your head, a bed to sleep in, and food to eat, a car to get you around. Those couple things, you're wealthy.
Yeah.
Right? So every single person that has that has enough to give time and maybe a little bit of money. I mean, you could donate a pillow. You could donate a set of sheets. So that's the thing for me that I love to see this mission moved forward is if you don't take the time to notice what's in your community, then, what is all that success that you have mean? That's success per the way of the world, right? So what kind of legacy are you leaving behind? What are you teaching your children? Are you teaching your children that it's okay to just sit back and be comfortable and have a great lifestyle, go on vacation, go play sports, and not know anything about the kids in the next neighborhood over, on the other side of the parkway or wherever they might be, right? It's such a good opportunity to give just a little bit of time and energy and money. And even, it's such a good family event.
Yeah.
We've had several families come out with the kiddos and build beds, and just teaching your children that you do have a responsibility to your community. I think that is a gift that, that's worth, it's like a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's that kind of gift, right?
Yeah.
You're teaching your children how to care and be empathetic and to just understand what is happening. That there's people that live differently than you do, and there's people that don't have all the basic comforts that you have.
Yeah.
So,
I want to, based on what you're saying, I want to go back and just kind of make sure I'm not misunderstood. And even though there are many, many people that live in third world, second world countries and don't have that much, it doesn't mean they're not happy. Those are some of the happiest people.
right?
And Luke Mickelson, again, the founder of SHP, talked about how, you're going to deliver a bed. And he's like, these kids are like happy and full of life. And it's, you have just made their century by delivering a bed. And yet somehow, some way, and that's the other aspect of being exposed to other cultures and circumstances. People are without much are still hold on to their family, hold on to values, and they're happy people.
Well, it's really, I remember a delivery particularly that had a couple of teenagers, and that's one of the other things I want to mention. If, we absolutely love and appreciate getting bedding from folks. Bed in a bag sets for twin size bed are awesome because everything's all wrapped up in one. But, we deliver for more than just little kids. So we get a lot of very young leaning bedding, like cartoon characters and Disney princess and, like little dinosaurs and dragons and whatever little boys like. And we have a lot of teenagers that need beds too. And we do need some plainer looking bedding. Yeah. And so we've put that word out a few times. We have some good plain stuff right now, but there was a 14-year-old girl and she was so quiet and just so sweet. And she had I think a 17-year-old brother. They had never had their own bed to sleep in.
Wow.
I mean, can you imagine? Like, I know when I was growing up, I used to rant and rave that I had a twin size bed, and I would tell my mother, I can't sleep, I need a big bed. And when she got me a double bed, I don't know how old I was, like 13 maybe, I felt so much better. I could sleep because I had more room. And I mean, that was me being a brat.
Yeah.
Let's not joke. So these kids have never had their own bed, and they're teenagers. And like, you just see this quiet, they're just so grateful. And, they don't say a whole lot, but you can see it in their face. Their eyes light up, and they're just so excited by it. Yeah. So it's really cool. And, one other thing I do want to add, because, yes, people that are involved in this organization really do it out of the goodness of their hearts. And it's because, for me, I love my community. I want to make a difference in my community. And I am by no means a wealthy woman, but I love to give back. And
It makes you feel good.
I love the way that makes me feel. But, you know, I take it as just, again, a little mission moment. Every time I'm leaving, I make it a point to talk to, it's usually many, many times just a single mom. But I'll make it a point to talk to the mom and just ask, you know, how can I pray for you? Is there anything specific that you need? And, it, you know, depending on the receptiveness to that, I'll offer to pray with them right then and there. And a friend of mine that goes on deliveries, he carries little crosses with him. And he was on the delivery with me last week, and he gave the kids crosses, and they just loved it. And little Tank was running around. He's like, look at my cross, Miss Ann. And he was so excited. And, you know, we had a nice little prayer with the family. And SHP itself is not a Christian organization, but I think it's born out of Christian belief of giving back and taking care of those that are forgotten. So that's another thing that I love about it. You know?
I mean, I know Idaho well. Like both of my boys are in school out there. Those are good people. And the guy made a comment in the Micro episode. He's like, we people in Idaho, we know how to take care of stuff. And it's just, it's that kind of that farmer mentality. Probably a lot of the way you grew up. You know, you take care of your own, you kill your own food, whatever. You fix your cars. You don't rely on other people. You know, you help out someone, make them self-reliant. That's definitely based in that culture.
Well, I think Huntsville has that.
Absolutely.
It has that small town feel that this town is exploding. I mean, Troy, coming out here, I don't venture out to Madison too often because it's a zoo. I live in town. This is way too far out of my zip code.
I'm sorry.
But, you know, it's amazing to see there's just so much robust life everywhere in this community.
Yeah.
But Huntsville has, I think, over 3,000, not Huntsville. Yes, Huntsville. Or is it Alabama?
Nonprofits?
Yes.
Yeah, it's around 3,000. I think it's probably greater Huntsville.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
There's that much going on in this community. And what do we have now? We don't even have 1 million people in Huntsville, I don't think. Maybe with Huntsville and Madison combined, we have like 750, 700.
I don't know.
I don't even know if it's that high, but we are the biggest city in our state now.
Yeah.
And, you know, we do a good job of taking care of our people here. We do well with the homeless. We have a lot of wonderful just organizations that are really reaching out and caring for people. So
yeah,
I'm really happy to live here. Like, I was a Pennsylvania girl, Pittsburgh, then Philadelphia, and never thought I would end up here. But, you know, this is where God put us. And 13 years later, we don't have any plans to move until retirement. So
the kid thing is tough. When you hear kids, I don't necessarily think 12 to 17.
Right.
I might think up to 12, 13, you know, but then you get so like it is a difficult things at times. Hey, we're taking donations for kids. And you may have to always attach that 3 through 17 and maybe add some verbiage that's like try to do age appropriate selections. But that's a difficult thing.
It is. And, you know, a lot of people don't really get excited about giving towards older kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've done angel tree stuff with different groups of people before, and with my Sunday school class a few years back, I remember I did the shopping for the angel tree, and I intentionally picked some teenagers because they're always the last ones left.
Yeah.
That people want to give for the little kids, but yeah, teenagers are difficult. I'm sure I was an awful one, and I'm really thankful that I don't have any, but
yeah.
You know.
I had this guy named Brandon Bishop in here from McFAPA, Madison County Foster and Adoptive Parent Association. Cool. And, you know, they've had several foster kids in their home. And we talked a little bit about some of the teenagers and how hard that is. You know, they feel like there's no hope for them. They're just going to get passed around until they're 18, you know?
Yeah.
And there's really, I'm sure they feel like there's this, after you're a certain age, no one's going to adopt me.
Well, and that's something that's really sad about homelessness that I don't know how many people know this, but I have a good friend that helps the homeless out, and a lot of kids age out of foster and go into homelessness.
Right.
And there's a community of homeless people that are pretty much working young adults. They have bikes, they get around, and you know, it's really hard to get off your feet and really just get enough money to collect it. You know, you don't have an ID with an address. How do you get a bank account? How do you have a credit check? It's hard to have a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I don't think a lot of people think about those things. And foster is one of those where that's a tough industry overall. I think it's a pretty broken system.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's more we could do with foster kids. But yeah, the teenagers, they're just aging out and they often end up on the street just having a really tough time.
Yeah. Makes your heart go out.
Absolutely.
You know, but it's hard, right? I mean, it's just that same, well, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Where should I focus my time and my attention?
And I think
my heartstrings are pulled by so many things, but
Mm-hmm.
I only can devote to so many things at once, right?
well, exactly. I mean, the one thing that we don't have an endless supply of, and, you know, not that anyone has an endless supply of money unless you're maybe Jeff Bezos, but I mean, time, I always say, is my most valuable resource. And I'm sure it's just about everybody's most valuable resource.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I encourage everybody to find something that really grabs onto you, that really speaks to your innermost self, that like, hey, this is where I can make a difference. And I know there's plenty of people that volunteer with multiple different organizations, and I haven't found that really works for me. You know, I've been called to this organization, and my husband is more he's the build guy. He wants to be at all the builds. I'm not at every build. I think I've missed the last 2 or 3, but I'll be at the one on December 3rd, and I'll be greeting anyone that comes in. So if you want to come help us out, it's 6000 Technology Drive. Again, that is 6000 Technology Drive. Look for the SHP flags. We are happy to have you. We're starting around 1:30 on Sunday, December 3rd.
Got it. Is there something else that you're extremely passionate about, that if you had the time and the resources and all that, this coming Monday, here it is, we're on a Saturday recording this, on a Monday, I want to start this nonprofit. This is an underserved area, whether it's Huntsville, something in the nation where Ann Kepner feels like, man, I could make a difference.
Well, I would have to say it would have to do something with empowering underserved women.
Okay.
Because women, you know, many parts of the world, even parts of this country, women are second-class citizens. They're property still in many parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to the South, that was something that I noticed right away, is that people thought I was blunt, because I am. But that just meant I was rude to Southerners. So, yes, I'm blunt, but one thing about me is that I tell the truth and I don't sugarcoat it. I have learned some more manners maybe at this point in my life, that I don't hurt people's feelings, especially intentionally. But my closest group of friends really knows and trusts my word, because I mean what I say and I say what I mean. Mm-hmm. And I think that women are still, they just need more support. I mean, one of the things, I'll mention Momentum again. Momentum is a women's executive leadership program, and I'm in class 2. There's 20 fabulous women in my class, and, you know, they're from all walks of life doing just amazing work, missile defense and different contractors, Radiance Technologies, FBI, just to name a few. And women are just challenged in a different way than men are. You know, I've never had children, but I still do the primary caretaking of the home. You know, my husband helps with cleaning. He can cook just a tiny bit. He kind of just can heat things up. But, you know, he's not going to scrub a toilet, which fine, right? Everybody has their roles. But he does all the vacuuming and he does all the dishes. So that's amazing. But a lot of working women, they don't even have that, right? They're raising the kids. They're working full time, having big jobs. I think one of the things that I think is unique about women is, for one, we're definite multitaskers. Look at the way our brains are wired. Mm-hmm. Men are truly not clinically wired to multitask. They're thinking of one thing at one time. Like, if you ask any woman at any time, what are you thinking about? It's probably at least 25 different things. Mm-hmm. If I ask my husband, what are you thinking about? And he says nothing, he means it. I mean, am I wrong? Not really. And I love men. Men have their purpose. I love my husband. I love my dad. I love my brother. We need men in this world. But women still, they need their place in this world. And one of the big things that I'm very passionate about is birth advocacy. I would never want to have a baby in the South. It's a cesarean nightmare here. I'm much more supportive of the midwifery model of care. And even though we live in one of the best countries in the world, we still have a horrific infant and maternal mortality rate. And, you know, you can look into that as much as you'd like to, but that's one of the soapboxes that I've been on. That's why I initially got into postpartum doula work, to just help. I was a birth doula as well. Didn't love it just because I didn't love the on-call aspect, but I love being present for a birth, because how could you not? You're witnessing a miracle. But the postpartum work, give me any baby and I will tame that child. It will not cry. I mean it. But I was not called to be a mother. I love babies. Yeah. My husband and I, though, it's just us. And, you know, we really weren't called to be parents. We have love to give, and we give it to the kids in our community right now. Yeah. So,
has there been a difference between life in the North and life in the South when it comes to people come across you and say, "What do you mean you don't have kids, Ann?"
You know, I think because of my age, not so much now. Like, I still meet people occasionally like, "Oh, you have one in you." I'm like, get out of my uterus, please. So, you know, I don't respond well to that. I used to be probably a lot more rude when people would say things to me, because it's just a very personal decision, you know?
Sure.
But no, the thing I've noticed most in the South is, so I'm very petite. I'm like 5 feet tall, you know, on a good day. And I'm just a little blonde woman. And I think men, especially men in more powerful positions and in the workforce, are very much like, "Oh, okay, thank you, honey. Just go sit at your desk." You know what I mean? So I have had leadership roles. I was a COO. Leadership is kind of natural to me. It's hard for me to be a part of something and not, you know, just have some leadership abilities come out. Yeah. And those are some of my gifts, you know? I don't want to take charge of everything, and I don't, because I know how to step back. But yeah, that was very different to me. I think people just respond to people differently. But the thing that I love about the South that's different is people literally everywhere you go say, "Hi, how you doing?" And they mean it. And it's, you know, even if they don't mean it, they're at least saying it. Like, walk around the streets of Philly, man, you might just get shouldered out of the way and not even an "excuse me, pardon me," nothing. If you have not the right kind of jersey on at an Eagles game, you might get killed. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Horse fans.
Yeah, Eagles fans.
I love Philly, but at the same time, you better have some thick skin if you're going to live there. When it's all said and done, and you have an epitaph type thing, right? You have a funeral for your people come. What do you want people to remember you for? I don't know if you ever think about that.
Well, I think they will remember that I told the truth.
Okay.
I hope that's true. And I'm not a squishy, like, lovey-dovey kind of person, but I love my friends and I love my family. I'm not big on hugging, and, you know, my friends and family know that. But if I love you, you're going to know it, right? So I hope that that's true in my actions. And it might be nice if somebody said I could sing, because I sing.
Are you a soprano?
I am a soprano.
Okay.
But when I sing worship music, I'm not great at harmonizing, so I just do melody. But
do you want to sing something now?
What would you like me to sing?
What's your go-to?
My go-to is Guns N' Roses.
You can sing whatever you want.
No, I can't do Guns N' Roses. I do like to rap a little bit.
Do you?
I do.
To what? Paul Revere? Beastie Boys?
Oh, I love Beastie Boys, but not Paul Revere. I love to do Get It Together.
Okay.
Add rocks down with the Ioni. Listen to the stuff, cause both of them is bony. Gotta do it like this, like Chachi and Joni, cause she's the cheese and I'm the macaroni. So why all the fight? Why all the fuss? Because I ain't got no Dustin. Yeah, ha. You know I'm getting silly. Got a Grandma Hazel and a Grandma Tilly. I'm a Grand Royal Prez and I'm also a member. Born on the cusp in the month of December. I do the patty duking in case you don't remember. Well, I freak a fucking beat like that shit was in a blender. I'm long gone. Word is born. Don't need a mother flipping fool to let me right from wrong. I don't think I'm slick. Gonna do a play like I'm hard, but I'll be driving the lane like I was Evan Bernard. I'm a working on my game because life is taxing. Gotta get it together and see what's happening.
Good stuff.
Was definitely not planning on that.
You know which one? I went to go do karaoke at Miller's the other day. You're going to Miller's downtown?
Miller's. Oh, is that the one with the green sign? Like
yeah, Tuesday nights.
Next to the Axe place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been in there, but.
And I was with like a work crowd, like, hey, we gotta do some karaoke. What are you gonna do? And I don't know. I did a couple songs, did my best, and then I was like, ooh, parents just don't understand.
Oh, that's a goodie.
And it wasn't in their database, but I was like, I could kill that song.
Last year we went to Barbados. That was supposed to be our 20th anniversary trip. We went to Sandals in Barbados, but COVID, so we did not go, and we pushed it a year, which I'm glad of because Barbados was super locked down, and everything's outdoor, and they still wanted you to wear masks. And anyway, we went a year late for the 21st anniversary, and I had waited all week for karaoke night. It was the last day before we were leaving, and it wasn't until like 10:30 at night. And when my husband and I go to a Caribbean vacation, we're up early, out all day. He goes scuba diving. I sometimes snorkel, but I mean, we start early in the morning and we're out all day. We're barely in the room. We go change for dinner, and then we're pretty much in bed by 10 o'clock, so we can be out all day again. So let's say I had a few drinks, maybe too many. By this point, waiting, and Living on a Prayer is one of my favorites. And I was
Johnny used to work on it. Is it Tommy or
No,
Johnny?
no. Like a Prayer. I'm sorry. Like a Prayer. I do that one
Madonna.
too. Madonna, Like a Prayer, and Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer. I do both of them, but I was doing the Madonna. And, it gets to the chorus parts and she's doing a lot of, vamping. And so I'm doing this and I'm like, and I want to dedicate this to my husband, my fabulous husband. I'm describing what he's wearing, and he's like beet red, and he's a big guy. And he agrees to wear white linen for me when we go on vacation. And he looks fabulous and beachy. And I'm like, and he's wearing all white linen, and he's right there with the beard. And I'm going on, and it just kills him. But I love it anyway. Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name, and it feels like home. So that's my little sample of Madonna.
Good job. Well, it's been a pleasure having you, Ann.
Thanks. It's been great getting to talk with you, Troy. I did most of the talking, but
that's what it's all about.
I'm just counting a list in my head of people that I'm going to be connecting you with.
Please do. I love it.
Yes.
All right, Ann. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All the best to you. Say hi to Fred.
I will.
And your chihuahuas.
Thanks.
And make sure you leave our house with a little kitty.
Oh, yeah. If you want my divorce papers to be sent to you. Yeah, okay.
Take care.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.